Greetings, fellow whiskey lovers. Welcome to Whiskey Whistle. I'm your host, Mark, and this is whiskey review number 148, the second part in the Canadian Whisky Series here on Whiskey Whistle. It's a special one, more so than usual. Why? Because it's all the way from the Yukon territories in Canada, from Whitehorse. This is Two Brewers single malt Canadian whiskey, and this comes from Yukon Spirits, which is the sister company of Yukon Brewing. Yukon Brewing. Anyway, before we get started, first of all, I have to give a big thank you to Ms. Jasmine Sangria. Thank you so much. You went to a lot of trouble to send these to me, and it took a couple of months of travel time for these two bottles of precious liquid to get over here to Seoul. And I've had them for about, I think, 5 or 7 days, 10 days, around about 10 days maybe. Bit of delay with one of my daughters being ill. Finally, I've got some time to get this done. So now we're going to be doing something a little bit different here with the channel. I am going to be moving a lot of the content into print form. There will be a blog starting hopefully concurrent with this review, possibly a day or two on either side, depending on how my editing time goes on the weekend. So watch for the launch of the Whiskey Whistle blog, and hopefully the relaunch of whiskywhistle.com. Anyway, we're going to get these poured. I've got batch number 3 and batch number 4. Batch number 3 is peated. So that is very cool. In fact, that is the very first peated Canadian whiskey on the market. And batch number 4, special release. We're going to start with this one because it's unpeated, and then we'll go on to number 3, and we'll see what happens there. All right, let's get that poured. I'm going to use a standard Glencairn glass for this one. Very lovely fragrance coming out of there. Okay, we'll get it poured, and that should be good, I think. As I mentioned, I'm going to be moving a lot of the content into print form. However, what I will do, I've got a very recently released, in fact, it's 2 days old. This is a press release from the distillery, from the Two Brewers Yukon single malt whiskey company, from Yukon Spirits and Yukon Brewing, again courtesy of Ms. Jasmine Sangria. So here's the press release. For immediate release, Two Brewers Whiskey takes home triple silver medals. First time entrant wins big at Canadian Whisky Awards. So a few weeks ago, the Canadian, 2 weeks maybe, the Canadian Whisky Awards were held. And, so first time entrant, Two Brewers Yukon single malt whiskey won 3 silver medals. Okay, we'll just go through this one. This is from the president, Bob Baxter. We're very flattered to have won these 3 awards, especially so early in our whiskey career, quipped President Bob Baxter. The premise of the Two Brewers line of single malt whiskeys is that every release is unique. We're hoping to broaden the palates of those trying our expressions and hope they are as pleased as we are with the layers and depth of each release. And this press release carries on. From the array of aged malts they have created, Two Brewers expressions are broadly grouped into 4 categories: classic, peated, special finishes, and innovative. The three silver medals were awarded to Release 01 Classic, Release 02 Special Finishes, and Release 03 Peated, which I have right here. Let's carry on here. Two Brewers Release 04, that's the one I've got right here. A Special Finish Expression, will be the first two Brewers Yukon single malt whiskey to be released at select locations in British Columbia. Release 05, the first innovative expression, will be available through the distillery and select locations in Alberta. And I'm going to tell you just a very brief little history they've got right here about the company, about the two Brewers Yukon single malt whiskey brand. Yukon Brewing was formed by Bob Baxter and Alan Hansen in 1997, the result of a canoe trip conversation taken well beyond the campfire. After years of building a successful local craft brewery, they decided to expand into spirits, and in 2009 invested in a small pot still, which I believe is 400 liters. Hence came the birth of two Brewers Yukon single malt whiskey, made in small batches with a variety of malted and roasted grains using different fermentation techniques and a mix of barrels. The goal is that no two releases will be the same, so that as each expression emerges, it is layered and complex and probably never to be repeated. And for those in the industry who are watching and very curious about this, I'll just leave you this information. For media inquiries and photographs, please contact Jasmine Sangria, Jasmine at yukonbeer.com, Jasmine at Yukon, YUKONBEER.com. And the local phone number there is area code 867-668-4183. So feel free to get in contact. I'll leave a little link in the description there for you to send an email or give them a call if you're looking for a product. All right. Now, Release 04, which is part of the special finishes category from two Brewers Yukon single malt whiskey. And as I've been told by the Director of Marketing and Sales, Jasmine Sangria, that this is a finish done in bourbon barrels. So it's been finished in special bourbon barrels to give it its uniqueness, its unique flavors. And well, probably also a reason why it gets a nice little bit of color. This one, in fact, is a little bit darker in hue than batch number 3, the peated version. Color-wise, we're looking at pretty much a nice golden hue, isn't it? Or perhaps a roasted kind of a corn color. On to the nose for the two Brewers Yukon single malt whiskey release number 4 special finishes, which by the way is 43% ABV. All right, so let's give that a smell. Now this has a very spicy nose, spicy and sweet, and it's got some very interesting scents and fragrances that are coming right here from the whiskey straight up. The thing that I find really cool about this one is that I'm smelling bottle caps candies. So if you've had those, this is what I'm getting here. And it's a dead ringer for that. Especially the cola and root beer flavors. Maybe with the orange in there also. It's got a little bit of youthful kind of vigor and heat to it. But it's really easy to smell. It doesn't burn or anything, so that's really well evident of how much care they took in producing this. There's something like almost ripe kiwi here, so slightly underripe kiwi. So when it's very very tart. Also some hard fruit candies. Okay, on to the palate. Cheers, everybody. Really unique. It's sweet, and yet it's tart. There's a lot of spice in there. It's very drinkable. Um, there are some very unusual flavors in here. One of those is the durian fruit. That's a very, very interesting, creamy, sweet fruit that has also a very savory flavor to it. If you haven't tried that, the best way I can describe that would be that it's something kind of like vanilla ice cream with French fries, vanilla ice cream with, and just imagine with caramelized onions, if you can picture that, or even something kind of like a Guinness beer float. Okay, so you've got that rich malty kind of real savory flavor, and then you've got a nice sweetness to it as well. It's very, very easy to drink. Definitely doesn't need any ice. This is not a whiskey you would have mixed. It actually could do well, but I think that you would miss most of the experience in mixing it. But keep in mind though, I've not tasted very many whiskeys that have this kind of a savory sweetness to it. So with that savory sweetness, it's got a little bit of earthiness, something like a fresh green salad, a dark green salad with young leaves, so they're a little bit sweet, like young spinach, etc. With apple and ripe strawberry slices in something like a balsamic vinaigrette. There's also kind of a cola ball candy effect. Those silver candies, I don't know if they still are silver anymore. That's probably titanium dioxide that makes it silver. Of course, I don't know if that's exactly bad for you. And you really notice that savory flavor the longer you hold it in your mouth. So, in terms of the flavors, umami is really, really, really big here. And for me, that's fantastic. This is a flavor that that is hard to come by, and it's often out of balance, but here it's really nicely balanced with the sweetness. I think I need a little bit more in there. The finish also, as you would expect, is on the savory side. And I write here sweet and savory, balsamic vinegar, rosemary, very rich, sweet, savory finish. And it really does carry a long time. Very nice. Now, we're going to add a bit of water to this. And 43%, I'm going to add maybe 1 and 2. So, whoops, a little more than usual. And I want to do that because I really want to see what happens to that that savoriness to it, savory flavor that this has when the alcohol effect is suppressed somewhat. And we'll try to jiggle it around to get some of those fruity esters and so on to spring forth. Okay, back into the two Brewers Yukon single malt whiskey, release number 4, with water this time. The sweetness really comes to the forefront now with water. And that slightly unripe kiwi is pretty much gone. There's a little bit of jamminess to it now. And something like apple mint, an apple mintiness to it. And what kind of a jam? It's almost like straight up strawberry jam, but with a little bit of other wild berries in there. Wonderful. All right, on to the palate now with water. Cheers again. Thank you again to Yukon Brewing and Yukon Spirits. Now it's a fair bit drier with water. A little bit more spice forward. Ginger and cinnamon are now coming through. Much more strawberry now. A little bit less of the balsamic effect. Still quite savory, but very, it's moved a little bit more towards the sweetness from the savory. But still kind of that minty rosemary type of herbal effect as well. Okay, and the finish. Again, it's much more dry, a little more astringent. The flavors are pretty much intact there. Slightly waxy, oily mouthfeel to it now with water, interestingly enough. I kind of want to save a bit of that in the glass. Well, I've got a little bit more I can pour. Okay. Put that back there. Oops. Okay. So, that's been release number 4. Of course, I added that. I should add a little bit more water. There. Okay. Got a little bit left to compare in the next review with batch number 3, the peated version. Okay, so stay tuned for that one. Let's talk about the score before we wrap things up here. The WhiskyWhistle whiskey score for 2 Brewers Yukon Single Malt Whiskey, batch number 4, is going to be 84 out of 100. 84 out of 100, that's the WhiskyWhistle whiskey score for batch 4 from 2 Brewers Yukon Single Malt Whiskey. Big thanks again to the company and to Miss Sangria. So happy, so pleased. It's great that that you would want me to be involved in your sort of we'll call it internet-based marketing scheme. Glad I can help, and hopefully this helps you in, even if it's in a small, very small way. Let's hope that it gives you a little bit of an uplift in sales, or in at least in spreading the word of your great whiskey. Okay, so stay tuned for the next one. That's going to be batch number 3 coming next. Take care now.